Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here to the full story on WYAB 103.9, coming to you live from WYAB 103.9 as well as Rumble and YouTube if you want to see the radio face. But we're getting into a busy day into this week. A lot of crazy things has happened at the beginning of this week as President Biden is looking to completely shake up things and try to mess up as much as he can before Donald Trump comes into office, as well as some problems with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So one thing I want to try a new format that I want to try this morning is taking a break very early on, because as we start out very early, obviously we have a lot of listeners that come in later in on the show. So what I thought about what we do, at least try for the next couple of days, is to give you an overview of the show that's going to happen for the day, and then take a break very early on, so we have more time throughout the rest of the hour, as more and more people start to tune in, as they start to wake up throughout the morning. So today we have. So typically we get to have 4 segments on the show. So we have a top story, and then we have we can cover 3 total stories, and I'll try to get a this day in history at the end. So what I want to cover this morning is I want to talk mainly about the things that President Biden is trying to completely screw up before Donald Trump gets into office. And we've talked about the pardoning and all that craziness, but now he is trying to, or he has already now, released 11 Guantanamo Bay detainees. Just let them go to the Middle East. We're going to talk about that, as well as completely restricting drilling sites off of several different areas from federal land throughout the United States, which is interesting because we're going to talk about the legal implications of that and how the president can enact it, but the president can't just get rid of that action without Congress, according to a 2019 ruling. Very interesting on how that goes. How the president can protect it, but he can't unprotect it, according to the law, which can be changed, and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the issues that Canada's been having with Justin Trudeau, their prime minister, resigning. There has been a marked dissatisfaction in Canada, much like there has here in the United States. Even worse, though, for them, as that guy's been in charge for over a decade now, and things haven't improved with his liberal government. And now with Donald Trump becoming president, the people in Canada were very much worried. How are they going to compete, and how they are going to be able to be competitive with the United States? So we're going to talk about that as well. So we have an action-packed hour ahead of us. As always, if you want to call in during the show or during the breaks, the number is 601-879-0002. But we're going to go ahead and take our first break right here. And then we're going to get right into our first 2 stories, which is going to be how Biden is trying to upset the apple cart before Donald Trump can get into office. So keep it tuned here to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we get to our first story. So, again, it's crazy how Biden is just trying to ruin as many things as he can before he leaves office. It's like the American people have spoken, and yet they, again, just give them people the middle finger. So the Biden administration yesterday announced the transfer of 11 Yemeni detainees, including 2 former bodyguards for Osama bin Laden, being held at Guantanamo Bay, and they're going to send them to Oman, which has agreed to resettle them, whatever that means, amid steps to reduce the population of the confinement facility there in Guantanamo. The transfer, which reportedly happened in the early hours on Monday, comes days before the accused mastermind of the September 11th, 2001 attacks on the U.S., Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, is scheduled to plead guilty following a deal with federal officials to avoid the death penalty. We'll talk about that more in just a second. All of the men were captured in the aftermath of the September 11th terror attacks and were held for more than 2 decades. None of the ones being released were ever charged. We don't have to. They're terrorists, and they're also enemy combatants. We don't have to charge them. People act like that's a big deal. Oh, they're not charged. No, they're a danger to our country. We don't have to charge them. They don't have any rights. They're freaking terrorists. They have no right. That's why we didn't bring them to our soil. They have 0 rights whatsoever. They have the right. They have the rights that we tell them that they have. And people have a hard time. Some people have a hard time understanding that, at least from a legal perspective. But again, Constitution doesn't apply to them. Whatever rights they have, we give them those rights. And we don't have to do that much because guess what? Those people, they don't give any of our soldiers rights when we get captured. No, they just behead us or they just torture us. Our soldiers get no rights when they get captured. So my thing is, why extend any rights to them? So I have very little concern about holding people without charging them. As long as they are dangers to the United States and they are not U.S. citizens. Again, if they're U.S. citizens, that's a different story, terrorists or not. But these people were not U.S. citizens, and they partook in the planning or the involvement around September 11th, or the people involved in September 11th. We can withhold them forever. Doesn't bother me one single bit. Especially since these guys are so dangerous. And I know it's been a while since September 11th, but it wasn't that long ago. The Defense Department said in a statement, this is how far our DOD has fallen. When they praise a movement like this, they said, the United States appreciates the willingness of the government of Oman and other partners to support ongoing U.S. efforts focused on responsibly reducing the detainee population and ultimately closing the Guantanamo Bay facility. And again, why? I get it, right? I was in the U.S. Army JAG Corps. I prosecuted a lot of cases. I practiced military law. The military commissions is what is involved with prosecuting these individuals. I've said before about military commissions, how they were handled. I do not agree with how they were handled, nor were they necessary, because enemy combatants can be tried, if at all. Again, we don't have to try them. We can hold them forever, right? We don't have to try anybody, right? There's no forcing mechanism. There's no law saying we have to prosecute them. That doesn't exist. The law is what we say it is. That's how it works in war. But if we do want to prosecute them, we don't need commissions to do it. We can prosecute them under the Manual for Courts Martial, under the UCMJ. As enemy combatants, they can be prosecuted under that, and there are specific provisions in the UCMJ to prosecute these individuals and to prosecute enemy combatants. There was no need for a commission. By adding the commission, they kind of created issues and essentially creating rights that didn't need to be created, and just making things problematic. But again, at the end of the day, we don't have to charge them. We can hold them forever. And why close Guantanamo? I never understood what the push was to close it. If people are mistreated, again, I'm sorry. The only reason I care about the mistreatment of prisoners is how it looks on the United States. I couldn't care less if those guys are mistreated, because I know for a fact, if the tables were turned and they had Americans, those Americans would be tortured horribly. I know that for a fact. We've seen it, right? We know that they would film their public executions. So I have very little concern. I have very little of a bleeding heart for these individuals. The only thing that stops people from torture and things like that is I don't torture your people, so you don't torture my people. That's how it works in reality, right? We have all these things like the Geneva Convention, which, the terrorists don't go by. But all that stuff, right, it's unenforceable. It really is. At the end of the day, we like to think, oh, we're going to have some kind of legal war or some kind of stuff like that. And this stuff has come up too with Israel and Gaza and what's going on there. But the fact is that there's no such thing as an illegal war, because as I said, war is by and of itself the failure of law. It is the breakdown of law. And as I say, all is fair in war, right? The only enforcement mechanisms you have in war is I won't bomb your ambulances because I don't want you to bomb my ambulances and my hospitals, right? That's kind of how it goes. But if you bomb my hospitals, then there's nothing preventing me from bombing yours. I don't torture your people, so you don't torture my people. But if you're torturing my people, there's nothing preventing me from torturing yours. And I'm definitely not going to feel bad about doing it. And so Guantanamo Bay, sure, it's had, issues with certain rights and things like that. And, we've had people go on hunger strikes. I couldn't care less. Go kill yourself for all I care. Right. Like you're not gonna hurt my heart here. Right. One less mouth to feed as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of these guys, again, they've been held. I agree. They've been held for probably too long. They probably should have been executed a long time ago. But they definitely should not be released. So the 11 detainees who were released include, there's a bunch of names here. I'm not going to read off the names. I can't pronounce half of them. But a couple of them I want to talk about, like Ahmad al-Alwi, who's an alleged Al-Qaeda fighter and part of the security detail for Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, was one of the 11 men released, according to the New York Post. In 2016, a declassified document said al-Alwi made several statements that suggest that he, quote, maintains an extremist mindset. And that is one of the individuals that they want to release. They want to release that individual back out to the Middle East, where he's going to go back, and he's been in an American prison for the last 20 years. Do you think he likes America? Do you think he's going to be, oh man, not America, they really showed me, I guess I'm not going to do anything anymore. I'm going to be a great citizen of the world. No, that's not what he's going to do. That's not what any of them do. He's going to gather his things, and they're going to try to plan another attack. That's why we've held them, because they're a danger to our country. This has nothing to do with human rights. Again, I there's the things with torture, the CIA black sites and all this other stuff that we had going on since the last 30, 20 years. Again, the thing with all that stuff is that torture, you don't get good information out of torture. It's just because people will tell you anything you want to hear when you torture them. So it's not to me, it's a weak way to get information, but I don't feel bad for them, not even the least bit. Because again, does anybody, I guess there's a lot of people now there's voters out there now who were not even born during September 11th. But all the wars that we had after that, but a lot of people in my generation has fought and died over there, since then. And these are the kind of guys that would shoot you in the back and all this other stuff. And I have no sympathy whatsoever for them. Because that's, that they are fighters and they are soldiers. And in that regard, they should receive a soldier's death. So I'm all for giving them the firing squad. That's what should be the end result for these people. And unfortunately, like I said, we've held them for too long because of the back and forth trying to do things politically correct. That's the problem. The problem hasn't been Guantanamo Bay. The problem is that we haven't enacted swift justice, which in military justice, it is supposed to be swift. It is not supposed to take 20 years to get to it. They're not supposed to get all of these appeals and whatnot, or any of that stuff, right? Because again, it's what we give them, nothing less, nothing more, nothing less. So, There could have been swift justice that was enacted, and that hasn't been done. And that's the problem here, is that now the Biden administration, because there was a lack of swift justice, the Biden administration has now had the opportunity to just release them. And that's a failure on previous administrations to allow this to happen as well. I mean, it's despicable, and it ends with this despicable note of Biden just completely releasing them. As far as Aman al-Sharibi, who is another alleged bin Laden bodyguard who's also released, a 2020 declassified file said he was bin Laden's bodyguard and trained in Afghanistan before the September 11th attack. He also, quote, may have been associated with an aborted 9/11 style hijacking in Southwest Asia led by Al-Qaeda External Operations Chief Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. So the transfer was carried out as part of an early morning secret operation on Monday, days before Mohammed, who is Guantanamo's most notorious prisoner, was scheduled to plead guilty to plotting the September 11th, 2001 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 innocent people in exchange for a life sentence rather than the death penalty. The deal given to Mohammed and co-conspirators Walid bin Attash and Mustafa al-Hawsawi has been heavily criticized by Republicans and 9/11 families, and should be heavily criticized by all Americans, because that was an attack on America. And to just give someone who has planned the attack and the murder, the complete massacre of innocent civilians. Again, they didn't attack a military base. They were cowards and attacked civilians. Civilians just trying to take their day, just trying to go to work that morning. And throughout, outside of the Pentagon, that was the only one that was a legitimate military target. Outside of that, all the other ones being civilians, and of course they use civilians to attack the Pentagon, like cowards. That's what they are. And for them to just be released or to have life sentences, and again, life sentences where they get to go to an American federal prison. That they need to live that life of luxury, a better life they ever would have lived, even in their own country. That is absolutely abhorrent, and that is just, it's unacceptable. They tried to do this a little bit earlier, and among the backlash, and then Secretary Lloyd, who's the DOD secretary, pulled back the plea agreement, but now they're going forward with it anyway. And I feel sorry for the JAG officers that were involved with that, because they threw them under the bus back then. They said, oh, we didn't approve this, we didn't do this, and they threw those JAG officers under the bus. One of the reasons I had to get out of the JAG Corps, by the way, because they will throw you under the bus as soon as you, if it's politically advantageous to them, they will throw you under the bus before you know it. And I feel sorry for those. Those prosecutors never should have signed off on that anyway. They should never have said, okay, that sounds good. And then they had the backing of the administration. And then when it becomes public, the administration pulled the rug. Oh, we never did that. Those guys acted out of turn, and then threw them under the bus. And then now months later, they're doing the same thing. Now that they've lost the election. So that was before they had lost the election. So they didn't want that. That was a bad news to get out for the election. Oh, we're going to let go the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. I say let go. He's going to get a life sentence. That's essentially letting him go, letting him off essentially scot-free. But that wasn't politically advantageous at the time. So they threw those guys under the bus, burned them until after the election, and now, a couple days, we're at now what 13 days before the inauguration, they're going to go ahead and approve the deal. That's just that just to me is it's completely it's cowardly on their end. Throwing those JAG attorneys under the bus like that is just blows my mind. But again, that goes to show you you can't have any kind of loyalty with those people. And then they go ahead and do it anyway when they have nothing to lose anymore because they lost the election. And that's what I don't understand though. You lost the election. Why do this? Like there is no political advantage you get from this. All it is, it's just punishing the country is all it is. That's just pure and simple. It's just punishment of the country. It's not good politically. It looks bad. There's no way to spin that as good. It's just say, hey, we lost, so we're going to show you guys. We're going to, the guy who killed 3,000 innocent Americans, we're just going to let him on a life sentence. And all those other guys, we're just going to let them go. We're just going to let them go. And it's like, what are you doing? This is so abhorrent and so despicable. It's hard to believe that they could do something like that, but that is exactly what they're doing because they want to punish the United States. They're angry that they lost, and this is their way to say, "F you, country. Here's the middle finger to you, because we don't care if these people massacred our own citizens. It's just un-American what they're doing, and." I hope, and the problem is, and this is the thing, is that these guys now, they're already gone, right? This happened on Monday in a secret operation. They tried to do this earlier, but there was significant backlash. They tried to do this last October before the election, and that didn't work. So now they did it in this secret operation on Monday. Those guys are already gone. They're back in Oman now. They're going to get back to Yemen where they're from very easily when they get reintegrated, whatever that means, which means we're going to send them right back over to Yemen so they can continue their plans against the United States. And there's nothing Donald Trump can do about it. He can't stop it because they're already there, right? You can't put it back in the canister, right? It's already out. So nothing he can do about that. With Khalid Sheikh Mohammed deal, once it's approved, there's almost nothing he can't undo it. If they approve it. It depends on how fast they try to do this. That's what's going to be interesting to me with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, because again, they got, just a few days. They got less than 2 weeks. So the thing is, they'd have to approve the deal and it'd have to go through on the commission, and the commission would have to the lead judge on the commission would have to approve it before Donald Trump gets in office. So they can approve the deal, but as long as it happens, if the trial doesn't happen before, or the guilty plea doesn't happen before the inauguration, then Donald Trump can pull it back. Because again, they have whatever rights we tell them. So Donald Trump can change the rules. That's what's the great thing about it. That is one great thing about a commission, is we can change the rules. So that's one benefit of a commission, I guess, versus the UCMJ, which is enacted by Congress. So, they're trying to rush everything in right now. They're trying to get this stuff in, and they're trying to force this down people's throats. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do that. And to those people who are in the JAG Corps going to do this, I would really hope that they need to look at what they're going to do. If you're the prosecutor on the case, can you sleep with yourself at night if you go through with this? I don't care if the president pushes it or not. He's not about to be the president anymore. So you kind of remember that, right? So in like I said, in less than 2 weeks, there's going to be a different man in town. So, if I'm the prosecutor, I refuse to do it. It's real simple. I refuse to do it. It's about time that people in the military started standing up for certain things. They've been nothing but pushovers in the military for the last 4 years. In fact, it has been very disappointing to me to see how pushover people, generals and everybody else were. The Biden administration said it. They just were pushed over. No one stood up for soldiers. No one stood up for the right thing. Maybe now is the time to stand up for the right thing. Maybe it's time for that military judge. The military judge has the authority to say, I don't accept the deal, right? He can do that, right? And I hope maybe that they have the gall to do that, to say, you know what? I put on this uniform. I raised my right hand, because as a military judge, he is still in the military. He is a soldier, or a sailor, or a Marine, whoever it could be, one of the service members. But at the end of the day, he still wears that uniform. And I would hope that the reason that person, he or she, who depending on the judge, put on that uniform to begin with, because they have some kind of patriotism. They remember what happened on September 11th and know who this guy is. And to say, you know what, as an American and as a soldier, I cannot allow this to happen. I can't. And I'm not going to approve it. And he can do that, and that will delay it enough for Donald Trump to come in there and fix it and say, you know what, we got a deal for you. It's called the firing squad. And that's the only deal you're going to get. And that's going to be it. And you know what? We're gonna speed this up. We're tired of these appeals. We're taking that right away. Let's finish it out, right? And it's time to finish it out before Donald Trump's next, before Donald Trump gets out of office. And it's time. It's time that these guys were dealt with. Just take him out. Just take him out into the bay. Shoot him. Feed him to the sharks. Right. That's probably too nice for him to begin with. That's even better than what he deserves because I tell you, I was in I was in I was in New York last December and seeing the September 11th memorial there and seeing where those towers were and seeing all the names on there. It's a beautiful memorial. I honestly don't think they could have designed a better memorial. And then going down into the museum and seeing the carnage and the death and the destruction that was caused that this guy Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had planned is, they should look at that before they determine this deal, because you take one look at that and you're like, no, we need, killing him is not enough justice. There is not enough justice in the world to be able to make up for what he did, but there can definitely be an injustice, and it's an injustice to just let him, to let him just have his rest of his life in prison, and it's definitely an injustice just to let these 11 guys go. It's too late for them; they've already let them go. But you go visit that memorial, and you see the lives. How many children my age who are now adults who grew up without without a mom or a dad because of what they did. Forever changed people's lives. And to see ground zero and to experience that is something else. And it really puts it in perspective of the nature of what these individuals did. And there can be no amount of justice that could make up for that. There's nothing. It will always be. You can only kill one man. He only has one life. But it's definitely an injustice, just to let him live out his days when those people were cut down, many of them in their prime, and those heroes that also worked diligently that day. Again, it was a long time ago, but not that long ago. People remember it. A lot of people still remember that day. What they were doing in the moment it happened. And to let this injustice go is absolutely despicable. It's too late for the 11, but I hope maybe somebody in the JAG Corps can stand up for what's right here, and say, you know what, we don't want any part of this. We took the oath to protect this country, and attorney or not, order or not, we refuse. And I hope there's some people in there that have that ability, that have that gall, to stand up for what's right, because it's about time it happened in the United States military. And if they go through with this, then they need to all be replaced as well, because they did not stand up for what was right. They didn't when the time came for them to show integrity, to show courage, they have failed. And like I said, now's that opportunity for them to show it. But if they don't show it, they all need to be relieved, because that's not what you put on that uniform for. And they'll disgrace to that uniform if they let this go forward. Bottom line. All right, we're going to take a break right here. When we get back, we're going to talk about Biden banning offshore drilling, as again he is trying to just trying to ruin as many things as he can before Donald Trump takes office. You want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. Keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we get into our next story. So again, we see how Biden is releasing the terrorists just scot-free. And now he is also trying to, he is, not trying, is, I should say, ban more offshore oil and gas drilling in vast areas ahead of the Trump term. So he will ban all this development, this oil and gas development, along most U.S. coastlines. A decision President-elect Donald Trump, who has vowed to boost domestic energy production, may find difficult to reverse. So the move is a lot of it's considered symbolic, as it's not right now in areas that are currently under development, but it prevents them from having future development, which is kind of the big thing there. It's including it's in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So the White House said on Monday that Biden will use his authority under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act to protect all federal waters off the east and west coast, the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and portions of the northern Bering Sea and Alaska. The ban will affect, get this, 625 million acres of ocean. So Biden said the move was aligned with both his efforts to combat climate change, and his goal. Sorry, I had a hard time getting that out before laughing. And his goal to conserve 30% of U.S. lands and waters by 2030. He also invoked the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, saying the low drilling potential of the areas, including the ban, did not justify the public health and economic risk of future leasing. So my question is, why now? If it's so important, right? If it's so dangerous that you got to do it, why'd you wait till after the election? Why are you waiting until, again, less than 2 weeks before Donald Trump gets in office? Around 15% of U.S. oil production comes from federal offshore acreage, mainly in the Gulf of Mexico. So again, that's still a significant portion. Now, there's been a bigger portion now that's been going with onshore drilling, but 15% is quite a bit. And again, they've pretty much banned almost any other expansion, right, of it, which is crazy. I mean, they're going to give the terrorists to the Middle East and then make us dependent on the Middle East. That's kind of Biden's plan. So the announcement comes as Trump has pledged to reverse Biden's climate change policy when he takes office later this month. Trump said in an interview he said on Hugh Hewitt, which comes on right before here, he said, "It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately. I will unban it. I have the right to unban it immediately." But there's going to be some problems with that, though, because the Land Act, which allows presidents to withdraw areas from mineral leasing and drilling, does not grant them the legal authority to overturn prior bans, according to a 2019 court ruling, meaning a reversal would likely require an act of Congress. But the good news is, guess what? We do have control of both houses. So maybe it's time to change that law. So that order, that original court order came in response to Trump's effort to reverse Arctic and Atlantic Ocean withdrawals made by Barack Obama at the end of his presidency. So we're seeing a common trend here. Obama, right before the end, banned a bunch of stuff. Donald Trump reversed it, and the court said the president doesn't have the president has the authority to protect it, but not to unban it. And essentially that comes from the federal law itself, which didn't really give the president that authority. It gave him it gave him the authority to ban it. But he gave him the authority to ban it, but not to unban it. Which is fine, right? If that's what the law was, but you can change the law. That's just a legislative interpretation. And guess what? We have control of the House and the Senate, which means that something like that could be passed. They could change it to where Donald Trump could reverse it. So again, this is kind of the benefit of having control of both houses. This is a great opportunity for them to show that they can get together and get some legislation passed that Donald Trump that Donald Trump has promised during his presidency. Now he can still expand a lot of the onshore drilling, right? So this is specifically to offshore drilling. But again, I think this is an opportunity for that Congress to do that. Um, Trump himself actually used the Lands Act to ban all sales of offshore drilling rights in the eastern Gulf of Mexico off of the coast of Florida through 2032. So he also used it as well. But again, it was for a very specific area. Biden said all the East Coast and West Coast, essentially, is what he said. And a big part of the Gulf Coast, which is where a lot of the drilling happens. Now, again, we don't do a whole lot of drilling on the East and West Coast just because it's deep. It's not like the Gulf of Mexico where it's relatively shallow. It's easy to get to. That's the thing with offshore drilling. It's a lot more expensive to do than onshore drilling. But again, I don't know what the future may hold, right? The future in drilling rigs or what have you, and they're always developing new ones. It's crazy how far they've come just in the last 50 years. These offshore rigs. So my thing is, why purposefully bind our hands when we don't have to? There is no reason. Like if there are certain, I completely understand, right? If there are certain ecological areas that are important, right? Like you probably don't want to do it in Maine where it could affect the lobster population, for instance. I don't know if it would. I'm just putting that out there, right? Because lobster is a very important economic activity to Maine. So it makes sense. Okay, we're not going to allow any offshore releases off of Maine because we want to protect the lobster industry. Okay, there's a cause and effect. That makes sense. But to simply say, we're going to ban large swaths of it just because, right? That's essentially what they're doing. Just because I can, right? I'm just going to do it. That's essentially what they're doing. And that's not a really good reason to do so. So the Oil and Gas Industry Trade Group said that the decision would harm American energy security and should be reversed. So American Petroleum Institute President Mike Summers said, quote, "We urge policymakers to use every tool at their disposal to reverse this politically motivated decision and restore a pro-American energy approach to federal leasing." So again, like I said, why bind our hands when we don't have to? And they want to put forth all this renewable energy. And again, the thing is, with a lot of this renewable energy, I'm for renewable energy as much as the next person is, but it can't be a complete replacement, at least at its current, levels of technology, right? Because the thing is, with oil and gas, is that as a fuel source, it is very efficient, right? For the little amount of fuel that you have that it takes, you get a lot of power out of it. It's a very efficient fuel source for what it is from an energy standpoint. With windmills or solar, it takes a huge solar panels, for instance, just to if you want to do your house, right? You pretty much have to put your whole front yard in solar panels, right? That shows you how inefficient it is. Where if you have, for instance, a diesel generator, you can run on a few gallons of diesel for days, right? That's what I'm talking about when I talk about efficiency. And you have to have these huge batteries with solar, right? Which includes strip mining of lithium, which is not really good for the environment. So like, what are you actually trying to do here? Because in a lot of ways, it's efficient, it's cheap for people to live on, and it produces jobs. And at the end of the day, that should also matter, right? Is the production of jobs, and that's something that the Biden administration couldn't care less for. Okay, I have I have 1 minute. But I'm running out of time. I wanted to talk about Trudeau announcing his resignation. So he announced yesterday he intends to resign as party leader and prime minister. But ultimately, the bottom line of that is that this goes to show that everybody else is tired of liberal policy. That guy's been in charge of Canada for almost a decade, and they have seen their economy get weaker and weaker. And now Donald Trump's talking about tariffs against them, which is a good idea. The whole North America Free Trade Act was just not a good decision. It sounded great in the beginning, but we've realized it just hurt American jobs. We look to the Rust Belt where Donald Trump won a lot of those states, and you see how empty they are. You see the rusting factories. It's time to bring that back. And again, this America First policy, they're seeing that in Canada. It's like, how come we don't have a Canada First policy, right? And Donald Trump just got elected down there. He's got all these plans. Our guy's been failing us for 10 years. These liberal policies have done nothing for us. All right, we're going to take our last break right here. When we get back, we'll do This Day in History, but keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story. And when we get to this day in history, so on January 7th, 2015, we just talked about how the Biden administration just released 11 people from Al Qaeda. Well, on this day, on January 7th, in 2015, Charlie Hebdo had the attack. There's a Charlie Hebdo attack in Paris. So they attacked the offices of the French satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo, killing 12 people and wounding 11 others. The attack was carried out by two brothers, Saeed and Sharif Kouachi, or Kuchi, I don't know, who claimed allegiance to, you guessed it, Al-Qaeda. And where they come from? Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, which is, guess where? We released those 11 people, you guessed it, the Arabian Peninsula, which is where we exactly put those 11 people. And it's how now they released them on Monday, but how bad of a timing can you be, right? When you released those terrorists just a day before that massacre. That's all I have for you guys today. We'll see you again tomorrow. My name is Matthew Bishop, and you've heard the full story.